Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos, as you probably expect at this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of Sonic Frontiers for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, and finally the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we essentially did manage able to completely done some mission objectives for the sake of the forms of certain cyberspace segments. Mind you, I haven't exactly done all of them, mind you, but I will promise you guys is that once we're done with the forms of some aspects, during the forms of the Final Horizon DLC update, I will surely be able to actually tackle through the last few cyberspace segments from time to time. But relatively speaking, it was about the fact that it's a good thing we're gonna have to able to save that particular cyberspace stuff until for later on. So, anyways though, today for this video is about the fact that we're gonna be able to continue things on and head straight over to, without doubt, is one of the hardest trials in the entire playthrough. And because of that, normally I was expecting to try to do this on hard mode, right? Well, here's the thing. As you can tell, that if you probably already know, I did somehow accidentally did a jump cut from the last video, and as a result, it is virtually unbeatable on hard mode. I have to point things out right away. So you know what that means? I somehow switched over to easy mode, because I just want to get a move along. So because of that, yeah, relatively speaking though, that's essentially what I was going to be thinking about this anyway, because I'll explain more details about this, and I think this might actually be the only time I'm going to be doing on easy mode throughout the majority of the playthrough so far.
Wow, somebody's feeling high and mighty. Anyway, Sage says you're the one who can turn the cyber corruption into new power. Is that right? And now you're a rock in a chair. Yeah, and I'm short on time, so if you want me to save your legacy, you're gonna have to fast-track this new power process.
So yeah, we've met with ourselves with the forms of Master King Coco, and the reason being about the fact that the reason why I have to set the actual thing on easy mode, in fact this is the only time I'm going to be set on easy mode, much like the forms of how it does it on set it on normal mode, while face up against with the end in a base game. Here we go on to the Master King Coco's trial, and basically as you can tell, we are fighting not only one, but 3 titans again, except this time we're now going to be on level 1 mode. So because of that, think of like the forms of how it does it for the ultimate challenge for the sake of the Kingdom Hearts games on critical mode, except the fact that, well, obviously if you can tell, that we usually start things off as a maximum of 400 rings. Now, here's the real, stupid thing about this particular challenge to me anyway, is that depending on what difficulty you select, basically though is about the fact that if you ever played this particular thing on hard mode or extreme mode, my god, there was this very annoying mechanic that I was not a big fan of right from the start. Is that about the fact in order to actually successfully try to do this part, well, mind you about the fact that if you couldn't tell already, that from the get-go I have to create a side loop in order to actually just try to stun him. And as a result, you should able to actually just keep on doing the actual pattern if you couldn't tell. Like, just keep on attacking him and just occasionally stomp. Now, as you can see, since we're going to be setting this thing on easy mode, basically, the actual perfect prey system, I quote-unquote prey system, which as a result, the prey system has been extremely nerfed on the higher difficulties, which because of this though, I believe if you set the thing on easy mode, if you couldn't tell already, the actual perfect prey system actually lasts a little bit, and then compared to the forms of how it doesn't, I could imagine if I was trying to do this on normal mode, basically you have less time for likely holding your counter attack. Although, I pretty much guarantee for saying this is that about the fact that I'm not going to be doing this on hard mode, because in order able to get a perfect parry for the likes of the forms of those Titan fights, you need to be absolute with the timing, and because of that, believe me when I'm saying this, I'm suck at the forms of the timing aspect of this trial, because whenever I managed able to play this on my own time, not just by the forms within the Nintendo Switch version, but same applies with the forms of the Xbox One versions as well, my god, my timing absolute sucks on these particular fights, especially concerning for the fact that to make matters even worse, well, if you spend on long enough, if you couldn't tell already, basically though, not only do you need to keep an eye on with your ring count, but also it's about the fact that if you couldn't tell already, the rings are not available during the forms of this trial, and because of that, there is no way you can able to actually keep on collecting certain rings. So, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that this particular challenge does remind me of something related to the forms of not only one of those challenges you can able to come across into from the likes of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but also it does remind me of the forms of the Perfect Relic on the forms of Toxic Tunnels from the likes of Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, mainly because no matter what though, I definitely heard about that particular level being one of the most frustrating levels in the entire game in Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, at least to be more specifically if you're trying to able to desperately want able to obtain the Perfect Relic. So, yeah, I can totally see why it feels a bit similar for that regard. And let me tell you something, is that whenever I do manage to play this particular trial on the Switch version, my god, it actually took me 6 hours in order to able to beat this thing. Well, I could normally try to do it on hard mode, but much like the end on normal mode, I just found it to be unbeatable at times, mainly because of this stupid nerve-wracking system, because no matter what how many times I was expecting to try to do a well-timing button press, but as a result I keep messing things up, and it's just you need to be super accurate about it. So thankfully though, someone said on the YouTube videos when the actual process has been addressed, thankfully though, they did somehow recommend me to able to actually tackle through easy mode, just in case if you're having certain struggles with this particular challenge trial. Basically though, I highly recommend if you having a hard time on hard mode or normal mode, if you think this is too much for you, obviously the easy mode will be your best friend, and I think this is the only time I'm going to be able to do on easy mode, because once that's completely done, obviously I'll switch back to hard mode. So because of that stuff though, definitely it's one of my least favorite trials in the game, mainly because it's a bit too much, and on top of that, if you mess up at least once, you have to start all over again. And believe me, there's going to be a lot of loading screens, and because of all that stuff though, yeah, I just get the strong feeling about the fact that this is easily the hardest aspect of this entire update, and it's probably without a doubt the hardest thing ever I've ever experienced in a Sonic game, next to the hot dog challenges from the likes of Sonic Unleashed, specifically in Eggman Land. So because of all that stuff though, yeah, I believe relatively speaking is that trying to deal with this particular trial for me is probably one of the most miserable experiences I've had in any Sonic platforming game. You're given to second to last challenges in the game, and one of the hardest trials in the game that goes on forever, and you have to deal with the forms of some very tricky segments, if depending on what difficulty you select. So as a result of that particular matter though, is that whenever I do manage to play this on the Switch version, mind you, is that after around 2 hours of attempts, or 6 hours of attempts, 2 or 6 hours, I made it to the end portion, finally, on my own time for a bit, and I screwed up on the Knight Titan. Guess what I have to deal with in order to able to deal with these particular fights quicker enough, is that I have to utilize the side loop in order to able to deal some bit of damage. And to make matters worse though, is that every time whenever you do manage to able to come across into Wyvern fight again, my god, you have to able to go for that particular climbathon again. And as a result, I feel like that Wyvern is easily the longest part about this particular trial. And because of all that stuff though, yeah, screw this particular trial, I absolutely hate it. So because of that, yeah, I have to admit it though right away though, clearly because of how the fact that I'm not going to be able to actually go for a higher difficulty setting for this particular kind of challenge like this. I much rather prefer like a half maximum amount of levels. I totally get it because the forms of the challenge, like the also we actually on level 1 for its ring capacity as well as strength and speed and as well as defense as well. And relatively speaking though, this is just ridiculous. Imagine if for those of you ever first time experiencing this particular challenge like this, my god, best of luck, especially considering for the fact that it will probably take you about a lot of minutes if you keep on messing things up, even on harder difficulty setting. I mean, jeez Louise, what are they thinking about this kind of stuff? So, but potentially speaking though, this is the final trial, so because of all that stuff though, I get the strong feeling that we're only going to be faced off against with 3 titans in this particular trial, which are Giganto, as well as Wyvern and Knight. The only time exception being is Supreme. So I believe something tells me is that once we're able to complete this particular trial, we can presumably able to actually access to the special powers we do need. And I believe, relatively speaking of what I've heard anyway, we can pretty much guarantee we can able to face off against with the true final boss in the entire game, which, relatively speaking though, I think it's probably best for me to able to actually save it for later. Just because no matter what though, I just want to get this particular trial finished before I move on to, you know, the ability to able to switch between multitude of characters on the fly. Although, in order to able to do that though, well, I should probably save that particular topic once we're able to actually complete this particular trial. So because of that, you know, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that the more you're able to do continuous combo punches, and especially noticeable for occasional stomp, that was the best method in order to able to deal with this part. And again, if you demand perfection from me, game, I demand perfection from you, because while doing on hard mode, this is not perfection. So because of all that stuff though, yeah, I'm just not very great at the forms of some stronger like challenges, likely also for an exact frames perfection for the sake of the forms of the timing aspect. But if you manage to able to try set on easy mode, then you should be good to go, at least in my opinion anyway, because relatively speaking of, I just cannot stress enough about the fact that I would say between both the end in the base game and as well as this, these are the weakest part of the game for me, mainly because it's a bit too much. And also on top of that, there's a lot of repetition going on, especially concerning for the fact that, well, we've already taken down most of those titans ever since and during the forms have been a battle rush mode. I mean, relatively speaking, no, that might be enough for me when it comes to able to actually fighting against with those titans, likely also for 2 playthroughs, likely also on the main mode or the main game, alongside with the forms of the battle rush mode. But aside from that, well, that's as far as I can usually say about this particular trial, I have to be quite frank here, especially concerning for the fact that, well, luckily, during the course of the actual cinematic set pieces, if you couldn't tell, once the cutscene shows up, mainly with the forms of the quick time events and or anything else like that, luckily though, your rings does not deplete it during this particular state. So because of that, yeah, that pretty much takes care of the forms of Wyvern. So because of that though, yeah, we are basically now going to be moving on to the 3rd and a final Titan before we take on the Supreme Titan again. Except the noticeable difference is this time, it will actually brings us a little bit more different to the table, which I suppose is probably best able to save that particular topic for later. So, anyway though, so yeah, today's date of course is the 9th of November today, in some cases in 2023 today, and of course, as to be expected is that today's day is the launch day for the likes of the final DLC wave for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which means we've finally made it to the finish line for the likes of the forms of the Booster Course Pass's release. So because of that, yeah, we've somehow managed able to become extremely happy about the selection, as we've already stated this earlier, ever since in during the forms of on Tuesday of any sort. So relatively speaking, it's about the fact that I just seriously cannot wait so I can able to actually experience those glorious last 8 courses throughout the whole DLC content. And relatively speaking, it's about the fact that eventually at some point during the forms within tomorrow's case, I can assure to you, I'm pretty much seemly to say, that I'm basically fully 100% everything from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with all that particular content alike, and I feel a little bit too proud for myself. So because of all that stuff though, yeah, I was expecting to try to able to create a side loop on this on his face, but he just likes to move around and stuff. But luckily, we've got plentiful of rings left, so at least assuming about the fact that if we try to able to do some of these specific parts worth noting for, then we might be okay for the most part. At least if I was assuming so anyway. There we go. Because, relatively speaking though, if you're trying to deal with the bombs of the shield part, I would seriously not recommend doing that particular strategy. Because not only it will make things a little bit tacked on, but also get this, is that if you try to ride on the shield, and basically though, there's too many missiles that are just trying to able to ambush you. And I seriously not recommend doing that. Because obviously if you do that, chances are you might able to actually just to waste your time. And on top of that, you're probably gonna let your rings drain a lot fast. So yeah, that's just the only thing I was gonna be able to expect able to give you advice on that part. Especially because I just want to able to get this you know what I'm saying, this trial done and over with. Especially concerning for the fact that, again, that, you know, between this and the end on the base game, definitely of one of my least favorite aspects about the game, which is kind of sad, honestly, especially concerning for the fact that we've already faced up against with those titans already, but to make matters even much more difficult is that you need to be, God forbid, trying to able to actually master the forms of the puree system. So because of that, yeah, I was not expecting for this to happen, but relatively speaking, I was about the fact that luckily we've almost got able to actually finish off Knight before we're able to actually have a chance to finish this godforsaken trial. And relatively speaking, I was about the fact that I will admit though right away, I'm honestly not a big fan of Master King Coco either, because I just have no idea. They try to make me try to able to go through certain hardest aspects. I get it because of the ultimate challenge, but either way though, that's saying something, I suppose. So but anyways though, let's go ahead and keep on tossing the actual shields right back at Knight. And sure enough, whenever we deal enough hits on him though, then sure enough, he'll be down for good. Especially, luckily though, on the last segment anyway, thankfully it's going to be a lot of emphasis on quick time events. And on top of that, no rings to be depleted. So you know what that means. Once we're done with the forms of the last quick time events, then we should be all good to go. So because of that stuff though, thank God I don't want to play this again, especially considering for the fact that, well, again, I'm probably not going to do this on hard mode just because it's way too difficult, way too stupidly difficult. Like, let me tell you something right from the start. Now, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Did you think that the Master King Coco's challenge is actually pretty difficult? Then let me know in the comments down below, because relatively speaking though, I believe my fingers is actually starting to get a little bit more painful at this point, especially after doing with a lot of button mashing and stuff like that. At least potentially speaking though, until later on anyway, thankfully it's a little bit more tolerable than the Forms of How It Does It for this is, because at the very least is that until at the very end of that particular update, you're still able to actually max out your level up cap for the likes of 99 level ups, for the likes of not only for its strength, ring capacity, defense, as well as speed, but that'll be a topic for later, especially because once we're done with this particular trial, we can now able to proceed to the final test, which as a result, or specifically the final battle, which again, we'll save that for later, so thank God this trial's finished. And I don't want to replay that particular trial again, which, again, it's just too much, I'm telling you, which, thankfully though, we can now able to actually do a lot of things now, so, I feel exhausted because of this.
I can feel it. Oh, I can't wait to let loose.
Bandage. Toparon Dulfi. Bandirein Dauda. Lezaruk Padres Parondaz Kane. Vamidus Paron Forces and Guide.
Huh. I'm not used to holding back.
Le Forzen Endir Joinju. Jul! Da in the summer Dulu let sight you. Le Kaidan Monro Wandi. 다륵스 브라인다.
Oh, yeah?
If I have to be quite frank here, Master King Coco, I've got one thing to say. Don't congratulate me, I didn't own this. But either way, so now we're able to actually access to proceed to the final battle, which again, we'll save that for later. So for now, we'll go ahead and try to able to likely change our difficulty back to hard mode for the majority of the last few bits and bobs from time to time. And relatively speaking, I was about the fact that we can now able to actually just go ahead and, well, first of all, I need to save my progress here. So I just really refused able to try to deal with that particular stupid trial again. Because my god, that's just mean. So anyway though, so let's go ahead and now switch to those different multiple playable characters. So let's go and get started with Amy Rose. So yeah, it's been quite a few days since we actually last played as Amy during the course of this DLC so far. Well, because of that stuff though, is that much like the forms of how it does it on the base game, before we get on to the grand finale of this particular update, it's time to able to search for, not only for the sake of the forms of certain skill points, Cocos, for certain characters, but also certain map scanning. So because of that, we're about to do those right now. So because of that, and exponentially speaking though, is about the fact that maybe we can able to actually learn every single abilities or skills for every single characters as well. So I figure I'm also able to start things off with Amy first of all. So relatively speaking though, that way we can able to actually just go ahead and deal with certain parts throughout. So, and perfect timing as well, because the Starfall Plus has been activated, so we can potentially try to able to, well, level up Amy as much as we can. For the likes of not only obtaining certain amount of Cocos, as well as the power of Seed, or the Seed of Power, and the Seed of Defense, so we can appreciate about the fact that we can able to actually level up certain characters alike, even though it only happens for about quite a few times worth noting for, at least if I was assuming so anyway. So, and I suppose no matter what though, we might able to start to be searching for certain character conversations as well. So even then though, I apologize for that particular tongue twisting did somehow show up from time to time. Well, relatively speaking though, I'm very glad about the fact that at least that particular process has been finished, despite the fact that I did somehow manage able to get screwed over from that particular Master Ninja Plus, but I think something tells me it's always recommended to play as Sonic on that part, especially noticeable because we've already maxed out Sonic's level up skills. So, but either way, something's worth noting for when it comes to the forms of specific courses did not make the cut, unlike in Mario Kart Tour. Well, I suppose it's probably best if we let Silver the Hedgehog were able to actually mention more about that particular stuff until when he goes back on to Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link at some point. Is that potentially speaking though, is about the fact that we actually got quite a few tracks did not make the cut, likely results in during the forms of we've only got one Mario Kart Wii track left that does not being returned since Mario Kart Tour. But relatively speaking, like I said before, it's probably best if we let Silver the Hedgehog were able to explain more details about that during the course of in a weekend and stuff like that. Especially concerning for the fact that I've already explained about the forms of what the Master King trial or the Master King Coco trial was, and yeah, that's just all I can really say about it. So because of that, also let me know in the comments down below of what difficulty did you select if you're having a lot of frustrations with that particular challenge during the course of a hard mode, because, well, I just got nothing to say. But either way, because I just don't feel like trying to go for hard mode on that particular challenge next to the end as on the base game, just because I just want to get the progression going. Especially I just can't be bothered able to well, I was trying to able to actually go through the entire hard playthrough, but it's just that with these two things so far, did somehow manage able to screw up my runs, especially concerning for the fact that, well, Not to mention though, because you have to deal with a lot of load screens for every single time. With the amount of restarts I have to activate for during the course of in the likely or so, depending on what version of the game I did somehow play. Likely, for instance, is about the fact that I did somehow manage to play the Switch version on my own time, like I said before. And relatively speaking though, there's a lot of load screens, and no matter how many times I did somehow restart that particular trial, it did somehow manage to able to make the load times a little bit lengthier and longer. I'm not even joking, the loading times are that long, and the worst thing about it is that I don't understand why this is. If you do somehow manage to able to restart on that specific points worth noting for, you restart at the beginning of the trial within seconds. The only difference being is about the fact that your rings counter has been restarted again, and on top of that, there's also going to be a lot of emphasis on a number of stuff worth noting for, likely also for the sake of the forms you have to memorize certain parts, and even especially noticeable your side loop gauge is now being depleted or something, and not only that, you have to able to go all the way back to the beginning of this particular trial, starting with of course Gigaranto, and then you finish up with Knight. But that's it, that's all it changes, so I have no idea why I somehow managed to reset that particular trial on my own time, with a particular things itself, goes likely or so for the loading screens, took about likely or so for 30 seconds. And if people want to meme about the forms of the Sonic 06's loading screens, then you're gonna have to do the same thing for Sonic Frontiers. At least with Sonic 06, you won't find yourself replaying the same level over and over and over and over and over again, going for that particular loading screens in general multiple times, assuming of course if you really want to go for the S rank runs, and don't even get me started on the town missions though, but that's besides the point. So yeah, because if you couldn't tell already, because of how difficult that is to do on hard mode for the sake of the forms of that Master King's Coco's trials and the loading screens, that does not save me any time, especially concerning for the fact that, well, there's a lot of emphasis on the forms of certain amount of restarts from time to time. Like, that's just plain ridiculous. But that's the way I feel about it, especially because, again, thankfully we've gone over with and done with for that particular stupid trial, in my opinion. Especially that, unlike in the forms of how it does on the previous 4 trials, I have no problem with. Especially concerning for the fact that despite on the Snakes trial, that it does take me a bit of some practice, but regardless of such though, unlike the other 4 trials, I simply managed to did this no problem, and they're pretty easy to deal with. Likely, for instance, with the forms of the Wharf ones, and especially noticeable with that particular Ninja Guardian is actually pretty easy for me anyway, especially concerning for the fact that obviously I pretty much know exactly what to expect. But nothing even compared to the forms of the 5th and final trial. Like, God, what were they thinking about that? So, but anyways though, so now we can able to actually access the spin dash for Amy. So because of that, relatively speaking though, this is technically the first time ever that Amy can able to learn a spin dash in a 3D Sonic game, since technically, Sonic Heroes, well, to be more specifically, for its Rocket XL or Sonic Adventure 2 for its multiplayer stuff. Although potentially speaking though, the last time that Amy does manage to able to utilize the spin dash was back in during the forms of Sonic Advance 3. So yeah, it's pretty cool to able to see Amy to able to learn the spin dash ability in 3D for the first time since Sonic Adventure 2. Although I don't usually count Sonic Heroes, mind you, because it's a Rocket XL. So because of that, yeah, that's what I could really ask for the sake of the forms of how the fact that every once in a while, likely traversing through different parts of the entire, you know, the entire island as far as I'm predicting something. So yeah, I apologize for my comment take is a little bit slightly bare bones at this point, aside from the fact that I was very excited to able to try out, you know, Wave 6 for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the first time. So because of that, yeah, still I'm very happy about the selection. So anyways though, so I suppose, no matter what though, is about the fact that also relatively speaking though, is that potentially speaking, is that there's one thing I accidentally said something during the course of the forms of in the, well, the previous episode of this so far, is that potentially speaking though, is about the fact that apparently I somehow made a mistake for the sake of the forms of how many Mii Racing suits we're about to be getting with the additional more stuff here and there. is that whatever I found out is actually 16 instead of 17. So I apologize, I did somehow miscalculated on that. That's just mainly because no matter what though, I'm glad to be back, to able to actually go back onto Mario Kart 8 Deluxe after 4 months since Wave 5 has been released. So yeah, you all know the reason why I haven't gone back to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for some time? Mario Kart Tour is why. So god dang it, Mario Kart Tour, I kind of despise you sometimes. Especially because, you know, every now and then, I will admit though right away, that Mario Kart Tour is, predictably speaking, is my new least favorite Mario Kart games I've ever played. Especially concerning for the fact that there's a lot of, like, too many emphasis on spending your money for able to actually get the better drivers and better items and stuff like that. I mean, at least the content is good, it's actually really good, like, in terms of content-wise. Likely also for the sake of the forms of, you know, characters, courses, you name it. But it's just that about the fact that it's been watered down by the forms of too many emphasis on microtransactions, I will admit though right away though. And on top of that, bad controls, which it might be a bit too late for now to able to get the controller support, because it's too late to able to actually bring new content to the table. And in addition to that though, is about the fact that I feel like the visuals are okay enough, but as a result, it's nowhere near as, like, extremely gorgeous compared to the forms of how it does it from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, in my opinion. Especially concerning for the fact that, relatively speaking, though, it seems that, the visual style, for the sake of the forms of the final wave, is really impressive. So because of that, yeah, I'm still very happy about the fact that we finally managed able to have 5 Rainbow Roads in a Mario Kart game for the very first time. So, like I said before, that we have the regular Mario Kart 8 version of Rainbow Road, and on top of that, the Mario Kart 64 variant, and also Super Mario Kart variant, and Mario Kart 7 variant, and Mario Kart Wii variant. So, I know I say this a lot, but it bears repeating, because obviously, no matter what though, I'm still very happy about that selection. So, yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Also, for the question of the day, actually, what was your first impressions for able to try out Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass Wave 6? Did you love it? Well, for me personally though, I absolutely loved every single aspect of it. Especially concerning for the fact that, well, a lot of people got a lot of upsetting moments during the forms of certain courses did not make the cut. Likely also, well, let's just say, for example, in Mario Kart Wii, there's no sign of the forms of Toad Factory, and meanwhile for Mario Kart DS, it's pretty sad about the fact that not only Luigi's Mansion, but the same applies with the forms of Airship Fortress, is sadly not going to make the cut. So, I suppose we'll probably let Silver be able to actually mention more about the forms of the actual cut content for the sake of the forms of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at some point. Like I said before, during at some point in this weekend, so... But yeah, as far as saying goes, that's as far as we can able to actually talk about this for the sake of time, folks. Especially concerning for the fact that I can't even believe that Mario Kart 8 in general is finished in terms of content. So because of that, let's just hope that the next Mario Kart game will be releasing until on the next generation of consoles for Nintendo. Well, it all depends really, just because they're still speculating for the sake of the forms of what the next generation of consoles might be, for the likes of Nintendo anyway, because I'm pretty sure that the Nintendo Switch is still doing really dang well. Although, originally though, I was expecting to try and able to mention something related to the actual Switch sales for the sake of time, but I just got carried away for the sake of the forms of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe right now. So because of that, I could imagine about the fact that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still continuing things on for the sake of the forms of these, that particular game sales. So because of that, it will expand a lot more, thanks to the forms of not only for the sake of the forms of certain, physical releases, but it's also about the fact that with the forms of certain Switch bundles as well. I mean, that would be pretty amazing as far as I'm usually concerned with. So, yeah, that's as far as I can usually say about the forms of today's discussion at this point. Especially, like I said before, hopefully that Silver the Hedgehog will be able to actually mention more about the forms of any other things to talk about. So because of that, so for now on though, is about the fact that I am very pleased and happy at the same time. Even though no matter what though, is about the fact that the last time we actually got a Super Mario Kart track returning was back in Journey Evolves Within Wave 2. So yeah, perfect opportunity to able to actually bring another Bowser's Castle track in Journey Evolves Within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so making a grand total of 2 Bowser Castle levels so far for the likes of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, similar to the forms of how it does it for not only, let's just say, possibly Mario Kart 7, and especially noticeable with the forms of, let's just say, Mario Kart DS as well, at least if I was assuming so anyway, except with Mario Kart Wii, just because Mario Kart Wii does have 3 Bowser Castle courses, so yeah, I just want to classify that. So anyway, with that being said though, I think, surprisingly enough, I think we should probably end things off this point right here. Despite this video is actually slightly shorter, but regardless of such though, that's as far as I can usually talk about. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic Frontiers. It's that, potentially speaking, we're about to start searching for some other stuff worth noting for as Amy, and eventually Knuckles as well. So I'll see you guys until next Tuesday. Later fellas.